For decades, we've watched the predator track its prey through jungles and concrete canyons, but the rules of the game have officially changed. We are heading into the Badlands, a brutal, futuristic world where humanity is struggling to survive, and the technology is just as deadly as the creatures hiding in the shadows. At the center of this chaos are two synthetics, one a brilliant scientist searching for a way out, and the other a hardened warrior ready for a fight. But they aren't just at odds with each other. They are being stalked by a predator that has spent centuries evolving. This isn't the hunter we know from the past. This is a faster, smarter, and more high-tech version of the galaxy's deadliest trophy hunter. It's no longer just about who is the strongest. It's about who can outsmart a killer that sees everything. If you think you know how a Predator movie ends, think again. Today, we're breaking down the story, the setting, and the sibling rivalry that turns a hunt into an all-out war. This is Predator, Badlands. Let's get into it. Deep in the galaxy, on the brutal planet of Yaoa Prime, a young predator named Dek is fighting for his life. But his biggest enemy isn't a monster, it's his own blood. We start with Dek in a high-stakes training session. He's smaller than the others, a runt, but he's fast. He tracks a target into a dark cave, his scanners flickering until he senses a shadow behind him. It's his brother, Ki. The brothers clash, swords sparking against the cave walls. Ki taunts Dek, pushing him to use his surroundings to his advantage. After a fierce exchange, Ki manages to corner him, but he can't bring himself to deliver the final blow. When Dek refuses to give up, Ki cuts the pillar beneath them, sending Dek falling into a dark abyss. But Dek is a survivor. He clings to the rock wall and climbs back up, ready to attack again. Later, on their ship, the tension rises. Ki tells Dek it's time to choose a prey to finally earn his place in the Yaoa clan. Dek's choice is insane. He wants to go to Jenna, also known as the Death Planet, to hunt an unkillable monster called the Callisk. Even their father fears this beast, and that's exactly why Dek wants it. He's tired of being seen as the weakling of the family. Suddenly, their father Jar returns. The atmosphere turns cold. Jar looks at Dek with disgust, revealing a dark truth. He had ordered Ki to kill Dek because he considers his own son too weak to be part of the clan. An angry Jar throws a device to capture Dek, but Ki chooses his brother over his father. He frees Dek and forces him into an escape ship. As Jar opens fire, Ki activates a shield to protect his brother, staying behind to face their father alone. The battle is short and bloody. Ki manages to disarm Jar, but the old warrior uses a camouflage cloak to regain the lead. Jar brutally stabs his own son, and mocks him for being weak. With his very last breath, Ki reaches out and activates the ship's launch so his brother can escape. Dek watches in horror as his brother is murdered, just as the ship blasts off, knocking him unconscious. Sometime later, Dek is awakened by blaring alarms. His ship has been damaged by debris and is screaming toward the surface of Jenna. He ejects his seat just in time, hurtling through the sky at great speed and crashing hard into a thick, alien jungle. He lets out a roar of pure frustration. He's alone, his family is gone, and he's trapped on the deadliest planet in the universe. Dek quickly takes stock of his weapons, making sure his blades and tech are still working. But Jenna doesn't give him a second to breathe. He hears a strange noise nearby and realizes he's being watched. Suddenly, a vine-like creature strikes from nowhere, snatching one of his weapons. Dek draws his sword, but more vines sprout from the ground, grabbing his arms and legs to drag him across the dirt. Dek fights back, firing his bow to force the creature to drop him, realizing that on this planet, even the plants are hunters. The real struggle for survival has just begun. Dek quickly runs to retrieve his sword, slashing through the endless vines. But for every one he cuts, two more take its place. Realizing he's being overwhelmed, he dodges a cluster of attacks and jumps onto a thick vine, using it as a bridge to reach the top of a high cliff. From this height, he gets his first real look at Jenna, and the view is terrifying. After finding a nearby river, Dek washes his wounds. He uses his scanner to search for a medicinal plant, but finds something even better, a biological weapon. He discovers a strange worm that grows red spheres on a leaf. When he tosses it, the spheres explode like a grenade. Resuming his hunt for the Callisk, Dek enters a wide field filled with strange, hissing red plants. As he carefully navigates the field, he hears a voice. Looking up, he finds a woman named Thea, trapped in a massive nest. She realizes Dek doesn't understand her and switches her universal translator, revealing she is a synthetic, an android. Suddenly, a Jenna vulture appears. The scavenger drops a rock into the field, causing the red plants to explode into a cloud of needles. Dek tries to dodge, but Thea warns him that the needles carry a paralyzing toxin. The vulture's plan is simple: paralyze the prey and eat it alive. Dek is hit and begins to feel dizzy. As his vision fades, Thea begs for a weapon. With his last bit of strength, he tosses her one of his blades before collapsing. The vulture dives in for the kill, but Thea, now free, tackles the beast and brutally kills it with the blade. When Dek wakes up, he finds that Thea has saved him with an antidote made from the local flowers. As he helps her up, he realizes she is missing the lower half of her body. She explains that she was sent by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation because humans can't survive on Jenna, but Dek isn't interested in her history and drops her. Thea quickly makes a deal. She tells him that many of his kind have come for the Callisk and died, but she survived. If he carries her, she will guide him to the monster's den. She wants her missing legs back, and he wants his trophy. Dek realizes it was the Callisk that ripped her apart. When she refers to herself not as a partner, but as a useful tool, Dek decides it doesn't break the Predator code and agrees to take her. As they travel, the silence is broken by Thea's constant questions. At a river crossing, they are attacked by worms shooting deadly acid. Dek hoists Thea onto his back to run, but they find their path blocked. Thea shows her value by throwing a sticky fruit on the ground. The worms rush to eat it, giving them a safe window to pass. That evening, they set up camp. Dek uses his tech to provide light as Thea shares her story. She has been on Jenna for 2 years and was trapped in that nest for 2 weeks. She tells him about her fellow synthetic, Tessa, and explains that her model has a higher sensitivity to the world around her. Dek sees this as a weakness, but Thea insists it's an advantage, one that allows her to understand the very creatures they are hunting. Thea remembers her life before the nightmare. She used to stay in a lab until her sister model Tessa took her out to explore. That was the day the Callisk attacked. Meanwhile, at a hidden human base, it's revealed that Tessa looks exactly like Thea. She was severely damaged in that same attack and is now being repaired in a stasis pod. As she recovers, she constantly whispers Thea's name, but the base computer overrides her emotions, reminding her that the mission is to capture the Callisk. The system also detects Dek's presence on the planet, labeling the Predator as a high-level threat. The next morning, Dek heads out to hunt for food. He finds a bone bison, the Callisk's favorite prey, but his path is blocked by a field of razor-sharp grass. Just as Dek prepares to strike, a small, tough-skinned creature jumps from the trees. It's a strange little animal that even Thea can't identify. It roars at Dek, and when Dek roars back, the little guy doesn't flinch. Instead, it charges into the razor grass, protected by its hard skin, to steal Dek's kill. Furious at the competition, Dek swings through the trees, with Thea still tied to his back. A branch snaps under their weight, and they nearly plummet into the deadly grass, but Dek stabs his blade into a trunk just in time. He leaps onto the passing bison, but the animal slams them into a tree, throwing them off. A frustrated Dek tackles the small creature, and the two get into a scrap. Poor Thea gets squashed in the middle of their wrestling match. The fight is interrupted when the bison charges them again. In a show of pure strength, Dek catches the bison's mouth with his bare hands and throws his sword, slicing the massive beast in half. But the celebration is cut short. A giant lunabug snatches Dek by the leg with its tentacle-like tongue, pinning his arms so he can't use his weapons. Just as they are about to be eaten, the small creature leaps into the bug's mouth. Its skin is so hard that the lunabug's teeth shatter against it. The monster spits them out in pain, and Dek immediately finishes it off by dropping onto its head and driving his sword deep into its skull. Meanwhile, Tessa and her squad of synthetics are closing in. They find Dek's ejection pod, but are immediately ambushed by the same deadly vines that attack Dek. Unlike the Predator, the androids use high-tech flamethrowers to incinerate the plants and clear a path. By evening, Dek and Thea make camp once more. The little creature is still following them, copying Dek's every move like a loyal student. Thea decides to name him Bud, and shares some roasted meat with him. As they sit by the fire, Thea asks about Dek's past. He tells her about the betrayal by his father and the sacrifice of his brother, but when Thea calls it grief, Dek's warrior pride kicks in, and he refuses to admit he's hurting. Miles away, Tessa's team finds Dek's crashed ship. Among the wreckage, they find a treasure trove of Predator technology. Tessa begins inspecting the alien gear, but she's caught off guard when a cryo grenade activates, instantly freezing her hand. The humans, and the synthetics, now have the weapons they need to join the hunt. The next morning, Dek grabs Thea and prepares to leave. Little Bud tries to follow, but Dek leaves him behind, insisting that a predator always hunts alone. Thea doesn't count, he claims, because she is just a tool. As they walk, Thea tries to teach him about wolves, how they hunt in packs, and how the true alpha isn't the one who kills the most, but the one who protects the family. Dek, however, isn't interested in lessons on leadership. He only cares about being the greatest killer. Following the scent of the Callisk, they arrive at the remains of Thea's base. It is a graveyard of broken machines and dozens of destroyed synthetic bodies. In the wreckage, Thea finally finds her missing legs. She manages to locate a working repair machine to reconnect her body, but the process will take time. She turns to Dek, thanking him for getting her this far, but then she apologizes. She has activated a beacon to call her crew, and she tells him to run. Her team is coming to capture Callisk, and they will see him as a threat. But Dek refuses to move. He would rather die with honor on the battlefield than live as a coward. To prepare for the beast, Dek ignites a pool of spilled oil, creating a massive smoke screen. Suddenly, the Callisk lunges through the smoke, slamming Dek down and shattering his sword. Using a piece of scrap metal as a shield, Dek slides under the monster, slicing its belly and carving at its head. But he quickly realizes why this creature is called unkillable. Before his eyes, the wounds knit back together, and its severed tail regrows instantly. The Callisk has near-perfect regenerative powers. The monster hurls Dek against the repair machine, knocking Thea's legs to the floor and interrupting her repairs. Thea, still only half a body, grabs a fallen gun and fires to distract the beast. Dek seizes the moment, looping a heavy chain around the Callisk's jaw and hooking it to a winch. As the machine drags the monster back, Dek grabs the gun and opens fire, eventually trapping the beast's tail in a heavy storage door. He sprints up the creature's back and makes a massive leap, decapitating the Callisk in one swing. But even a severed head isn't enough. The head simply reattaches itself. The Callisk pins Dek down with a massive paw, sniffing him deeply. Strangely, the monster stops its attack, as if it recognizes something in Dek's scent. The standoff is shattered when Tessa arrives. She throws a cryo grenade, instantly freezing both Dek and the Callisk. Sometime later, Dek wakes up strapped to an experimental table inside a high-tech transport vehicle. Thea is nearby in suspension mode, still hooked to the repair machine. Tessa has read all of Thea's memory logs and mocks Dek, wondering why he was allowed to live when his kind usually discards the runts. She views Dek not as a person, but as a specimen for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. Tessa wakes Thea up and congratulates her on capturing 2 prizes. To begin her experiments, she gives Dek a brutal, painful injection. Thea, horrified by the cruelty, tries to save him by claiming he is a weak specimen not worth their time. She suggests they just take his weapons and let him go. But Tessa ignores her, connecting cables to Dek's head that sends surges of agony through his body. Seeing the man who saved her life being tortured, Thea snaps. She reaches out and kills the machine. She begs Tessa to look beyond their programming, to be more than just robots following orders. She doesn't want to be a tool for a corporation anymore. She wants them to be sisters. Tessa's true colors are finally revealed. She didn't come back to save her sister. She came only for Callisk. Cold and calculated, she agrees with the predator tradition of discarding the weak and calls Thea broken. After receiving a call from Earth, Tessa orders a guard to box Thea up for transport and leaves the room. Dek sees his chance. Since the guard doesn't understand their language, Dek has Thea trick him. She tells the guard that one of Dek's gadgets is a map. When the guard opens it, the device self-destructs, blowing his head off. Thea frees Dek, just as an alarm blares. With guards closing in and opening fire, Thea kicks open the back door, and Dek leaps into a massive waterfall to escape. Sometime later, a wounded Dek finds his crashed ship. He patches himself up, but his high-tech weapons are gone. He looks at the pilot's seat, ready to leave the planet, but then he sees his brother's helmet. He finally understands Thea's lesson. The best alpha is the one who protects the pack. Dek heads back into the jungle, but this time, he uses the planet Jenna itself as his armory. He crafts armor from bone bison remains and gathers natural weapons. Blades of razor grass, toxic spikes from the red flowers, and acid-spitting worms. While working, he finds Bud. He sniffs the little creature and realizes the shocking truth. Bud is the Callisk's child. The monster had spared Deck earlier because he smelled like Bud. To return the favor, Deck covers Bud in his own scent to protect him. Finally, he recovers Thea's mechanical legs, using them as a tracking device to lead him back to her. Deck storms the synthetic base, looking like a tribal nightmare in his bone armor. He uses acid to melt through guards, and a whip made of vines and razor grass to tear through the synthetic soldiers. Bud joins the fight, shredding a guard in seconds. Together, they move through the base like ghosts, clearing a path so the mechanical legs can reach Thea. Inside the lab, the legs find the box where Thea is trapped. They take out the guard on watch and pop the container open. Thea wakes up, but hearing more guards approaching, she plays dead. In a perfectly synchronized battle, Thea's top half and bottom half fight together, using their disconnected state to confuse and kill the remaining synthetics. Deck eventually reaches the lab and finds Thea, now fully reattached and standing tall. She is shocked he came back for her, and he proudly admits he is now acting like a wolf protecting his pack. Thea wants to flee, but Deck has one final mission. They must free the Callisk so Bud can be reunited with his mother. The base erupts into chaos as Tessa orders an immediate launch of the ship. Deck uses his biological worm grenades to wipe out a squad of soldiers in a massive explosion. But the victory is short-lived. Tessa emerges wearing a massive, high-tech battling suit. Using a laser she stole from Deck's own ship, she blasts his acid worm into nothingness. The final hunt has reached its breaking point. Tessa's battlesuit is a mechanical nightmare. She uses its massive strength to tear down the lab's structures and swings a giant circular saw at Deck, but the Predator is too fast, dodging every blow. Meanwhile, inside the main ship, Thea reaches the Callisk's cage. It's locked tight. When a guard approaches, she tries to mimic Tessa's voice to trick him, but it doesn't work. Instead, she smashes the guard's head against the bars and uses his eyes to bypass the biometric lock. Back in the lab, a powerful strike sends Deck flying through the air. Tessa tries to crush him, but her suit's hand gets snagged by one of the deadly vines. Deck uses the opening to hide behind a massive container. When Tessa lifts the crate to find him, she realizes too late that he's already climbed on top of it. He leaps onto the mech suit, but Tessa manages to seal the cockpit just in time. Suddenly, Callisk bursts in and lunges at the suit. Tessa stabs the beast with the saw and lifts it high, but the distraction gives Deck the chance he needs. He climbs onto the back of the mech and starts ripping out vital cables. Tessa tries to end it by throwing a cryo grenade at the Callisk, but Deck bats the grenade with a metal rod, sending it landing on the suit's own arm. The ice freezes the mechanical limb, forcing the suit to drop the beast. The Callisk pulls the saw from its body and delivers a devastating final blow, tearing the battlesuit in half. As the cockpit hits the ground, the monster swallows Tessa whole, letting out a roar of victory. Deck and Thea watch as the Callisk finally reunites with its child Bud. It's a rare, peaceful moment, and Deck even bumps foreheads with the beast to show his respect. But the horror isn't over. The Callisk suddenly explodes from the inside. Tessa was still alive in the creature's stomach and detonated a final ice grenade. She crawls out of the remains, battered but still trying to kill Thea. Before she can strike, Deck stabs her through the chest. He reclaims his technology, and Bud finishes the job by ripping off Tessa's head. Sometime later, Deck returns to his home planet of Yaoa Prime. He stands before his father, Jar, and presents Tessa's head as a trophy. Jar still views his son as a disgrace and orders 2 guards to execute him. But Deck is no longer the runt they remember. He kills the guards in seconds. Jar activates his camouflage cloak to hide, but Deck is one step ahead. He ignites his ship's engines, creating a massive sandstorm that reveals his father's silhouette. Deck strikes, chopping off Jar's arm and trapping him. Jar, finally showing a spark of respect, tells Deck he can join the clan if he yields. But Deck looks at his father and simply says, "I already have a clan." On his command, a now fully grown Bud emerges and devours Jar's head. Thea congratulates her brother, and Deck claims his father's camouflage cloak as his own. Just as they prepare for whatever comes next, another ship appears in the sky. Deck looks up and realizes the hunt isn't over. His mother has arrived. If you enjoyed this video, do the algorithm things, like, subscribe, and maybe check out the channel. It keeps the lights on and the mic warm.